Hi, I'm Ron Mitchell, editor and publisher of the Bay State Banner, and I'm here with GBH Amplifies. And we're getting ready to have a great discussion about the challenges to immigration here in our state and around the country. We have three great guests who have spent their whole careers helping to support immigrants and the public healthcare immigrant system here in America. Please stay tuned. It's going to be a great discussion. Hello, and welcome everybody to another episode of GBH Amplifiers. I'm Ron Mitchell, the editor and publisher of the Bay State Banner, New England's historically black-owned newspaper that serves New England's black, brown, and progressive communities. Today, I'm here with three incredible guests who have spent their whole careers assisting immigrant families not just survive in Boston, but have a chance to fulfill the true American dream. Our guests today are Reverend Laura Everett, Executive Director of Mass Council of Churches. Thank you. Dr. Gerard Godot, the Director of Immigrant Family Services Institute in Mattapan Square, and Heather Yonst, immigration attorney with over 2 decades of experience in working with immigrant families. I want to thank all of you for being here. I'd like to start off, now that the Trump administration has started rolling back many immigration programs and has moved to deport hundreds of thousands of documented and undocumented residents, can you tell us about how this has affected our immigrant community? And I'll start with you, Dr. Laura. I'll start with you, Reverend Everett.
Well, first off, thank you for having me, and thank you for everybody who's expressed their concerns about our immigrant communities and neighbors in Boston. I'll speak most especially about the churches that I work with. We've seen major drops in attendance at food pantries, at ESL classes, and most especially at worship. We had one congregation in Boston that before January 20th had 350 people in worship, and on the Sunday after January 20th had 150 people in worship, a loss of 200 congregants in just one Sunday. Another church had 30 people in their Bible study on the Wednesday before January 20th, and 3 people in their Bible study on the Wednesday after January 20th. The Trump administration's new policies, specifically around immigrants, have a chilling effect in our ability to gather for worship, to gather to care for immigrants, and to gather to care for our neighbors. And that's why we, as the Massachusetts Council of Churches, have decided to sue the Department of Homeland Security.
We can talk more about that, but yes, I understand taking action and pushing back, it's important. So Dr. Godot, share with us about how it's affecting your community.
Wonderful. So for us at the Immigrant Family Services Institute, we work directly with families, either who have been here, for 5 years, 3 years, or for a couple of weeks. So we work directly with them, and then we can see the immediate impact on those families. First is the fear. Everyone is in that panic mode. They don't want to get out. Parents do not want to send children to school. And even in our program, we have ESOL program, computer program for immigrants. It's one day, as Reverend Laura was saying, one day we have a class full with students. The next day, it was only 3 or 4 students. So even adults, they don't want to get into the street. And now people are even thinking about leaving the country to go all the way in countries like in Africa. So it's almost like everyone is in this panic mode, and the stress level that is causing has impact on people's health, mental health, physical health, just to name it. So it's a very horrible time that we are living in our immigrant community right now.
I'm so sorry to hear that, but thank you for sharing. Attorney?
So I'm with the Massachusetts Law Reform Institute. A lot of what we do is more policy-based work. And large-scale class action lawsuits. So it's much more the forest than the trees. I'm less in the trenches than my colleagues here. Mm-hmm. I get the phone calls from the towns and cities and the school systems, from people who are terrified because students are not showing up for school, because people are not coming to church anymore. People are afraid to go to town hall. All of these things are really important to remember, kind of when you look at it from a broad scale. This is exactly what Trump wants. Mm-hmm. Just by rescinding Biden's 2021 protected areas memo, which essentially said that ICE would not be going into schools, would not be going into churches, into hospitals, into domestic violence shelters, and other secure protected spaces. When Trump rescinded that, he already accomplished his goal, which was terrifying immigrants. Terrifying immigrants into self-deporting is his ultimate goal in that situation.
Yes.
But the most important thing to remember is we want immigrants here.
Yes.
And Trump may not, but we do.
Yes.
The chaos
Yes.
and the confusion that he's creating is purposeful to try to create this system of who knows what's going on right now. But as you saw Mayor Wu yesterday, we are calm. We are ready for this.
Yes.
And absolutely, just like Reverend Laura, we are pushing back. We will not allow immigrants to be treated this way. This is not an invasion. This is not a war. This is not an emergency situation. These are
It's a-
human beings and not criminals.
Yes, well, thank you for sharing. And you make reference to yesterday, so I'm just going to give for the viewers who the time frame is a little sketchy because this doesn't come out the same day as our conversation. Mayor Wu spoke in Congress just the day earlier this week and was presented what I thought was a very, very good and upfront, direct presentation to Congress about Boston, and she did not take any shorts, as they say in the community. She was about it. She told them exactly what she thought.
That's right.
And I was very proud of her, and I thought she did a great job. Not that she needed my advice, but I thought she did a great job. So it's good that you bring her up in the situation. I just want to remind everybody that we're here at the Newsfeed Cafe, WGBH's Newsfeed Cafe here at the Boston Public Library. And if folks would like to ask questions, we have a mic right up here in the front. So please come on up with your questions, and we can have our panelists address your questions as well as mine. So this is a great transition because I want to talk about how important immigration is to our country and to our economic stability. I know that there's obviously immigrants have been demonized. That's part of the Trump and MAGA agenda is to demonize others, as many others as you can, as many people as you can make scary to the masses. Then now you have a foothold to move your agenda forward, which is really divide and conquer, or that appears to be to me. But anyway, so let's talk a little bit about the importance, and I'll start with you, Reverend Everett. How do you see the positive effects of immigration in our country, and talk about it as far as in your church and how you worship, and what it means to you from your perspective?
Absolutely, Ron. Look, the foundation of the lawsuit and the foundation of our theology is saying that we were all once strangers in a strange land. We came to this lawsuit and we come to our core theological conviction saying that everyone has inherent dignity. As Christians, we at the Massachusetts Council of Churches believe that everybody is beloved by God. Everybody has inherent dignity. And so we were able to come together. And in fact, in this lawsuit, the Mennonite Church USA et al. Versus United States Department of Homeland Security, the foundational claim of these 27 institutions is that everyone is a beloved child of God and has inherent dignity and worth. And so when you are demonizing certain populations, be them immigrant or not, you are compromising our theological convictions. You are compromising our First Amendment rights to gather and freely worship, and you are compromising our First Amendment rights to care for our neighbor as ourself.
So that is the crux of your case.
That is the crux.
Pushing back on this attempt to enter into the churches. And have you experienced that? Have you seen ICE coming into some of your worship services or any of your actual?
So the premise is around a chilling effect. And those numbers that I gave you, we have a church in a majority immigrant city that saw in January 2024, 173 families fed. In January 2025, 118 families fed, right? We're seeing that immigrant families are scared to come to food pantries. We're seeing that chilling effect already in place. We're seeing numbers drop down. And so we are making the claim that the Department of Homeland Security's removal, as Attorney Heather said, removal of churches and other institutions, but for our purpose,
Cases, churches.
churches, from sensitive locations is impinging on our First Amendment right and
To worship.
to worship freely.
Yes, exactly.
And we as Americans believe in the First Amendment. It also is a part of RFRA, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, that Republicans passed.
There you go.
So whether you like the First Amendment, whether you like RFRA, we believe we're standing on solid legal ground.
Dr. Godot?
On our side, we found the Lawyers for Civil Rights and the Haitian American United this week. We also sued the administration around that, ending of TPS because talking about
Temporary protective status.
Temporary protective status. Because remember, when we talk about the impact on the economy, most of the TPS recipients that we have here in our communities, they are the one working in so many areas where others do not want to be in. So just take the healthcare industry, for example. Go to all of the nursing rooms, go to all of the hospitals, go to the schools. You will see that most of the people who are working here are Haitians with TPS.
Temporary
Even
protective
when you talk about the bus drivers, driving kids to school, who are they? Temporary protective status beneficiaries who are working day in and
So
day
these are
out.
large members and integral members of our community who are providing services to that community that are, quite frankly, a lot of non-immigrants jobs that they don't want to have.
Exactly. So
And they are all legal and documented, but now with the removal of temporary protective status, they are now threatened with a deportation.
Exactly, because if you don't have the status, it means that you don't have your work permit. And even now, we see some families who are coming to our doors and said, "Oh, we just got laid off because our boss is so afraid." Even though the date is August 3rd, but they start to really send people back home now, from their job. So it means that we are creating a system whereas not only the economy is suffering, but also the families are suffering. Imagine you have a rent to pay every month. Now you don't have a job. So how are you going to pay that? So it means that you are creating a homelessness situation that is already so dire. We don't want to add to it. So whatever areas that you take it, it's very, very difficult for us to even think about the impact that this has on our community.
So, Attorney Utes, talk to us about how these cases can help to push back on the Trump administration's, attempt to go into these sacred spaces and go into community centers and actually, physically remove and deport these folks. Talk to us about how these cases have a chance to survive, because I know that they're going to probably end up in the Supreme Court. As we know, we've watched many of these cases that have come up from various different support organizations on various different levels of Trump presidential decrees and all of his various different activities since his inauguration and implementation. Talk to us a little bit about how you feel these cases have a chance to survive and how they can push back on this agenda.
Oh, sure. Much like immigrants in America, these cases are surviving and thriving. The reason for that is that Trump is in unprecedented areas, and he's in a territory that is dangerously overstepping his role as the executive. A president cannot pass an executive order that changes the Constitution. These orders are getting shut down. They're getting stopped in their tracks. I believe the judge out in Washington who initially stopped it said something like, "Where were the lawyers when this was made?" It was blatantly unconstitutional, the most unconstitutional thing he had seen, and he was a Reagan appointee.
Yeah.
So it's very important for us to remember something has to be outrageously unlawful for the president's actions to be stopped by the courts, and yet they are. I was lucky to be part of the Muslim ban challenge here in Boston, challenges to the family separation practice during the first administration. And the reason that we were able to do that is not because the president was acting within his authority. It's because he was acting outside of his authority. He is not a king.
Exceeding his authority,
Exactly.
going beyond the power of the executive
Oh, yeah.
to interfere
right.
with congressional programs that were funded and voted on by Congress.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
Look, and this is part of the reason why we are asking for a judge to rule on this. We anticipate our cases in the DC District Court. A judge will hear our case on April 4th, and we are hopeful that there will be a ruling that says, no, ICE cannot go into houses of worship because our people are afraid to gather.
And that has always been the rule, the understated rule of law in our country.
That's
is that
right.
That is a sacred ground,
It's
and
a
you cannot
core
go.
principle
A core
of
principle, yeah.
America that we have a First Amendment right to gather in worship.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, here in Massachusetts, we are lucky to have a state that supports immigrant and the immigrant community. And earlier on, we were talking about our Mayor Wu, who was down in Washington defending our city and our city's programs to support this community, and also to push back on indiscriminate ICE raids on various different communities. Talk to us about how the city and state are supporting immigrants and possibly where they could do more. And I'll start with you, Dr. Godot.
Yeah. So again, we are blessed to be in a city where our mayor is standing very strong with the immigrant community. We have seen some other cities where the mayors before, they are kind of, taking a back seat, but we were so proud to see our mayor, going to DC and confidently make the case for why is it so important for her to fight for us, because our city depends on the contribution of immigrants. Without immigrants, we don't have a city. And for her to be able to make it clear that we are not going to, let our immigrants go or to really turn our back on them, that was so important. And at the state level, we know that since 2021, there has been a lot of work being done to welcome immigrants. And that's what we need to do. Show the world that the U.S., has a welcoming approach toward immigrants, because this country, again, has been built on the back of immigrants. And without immigrants, we don't have a country. We don't have an economy. So that's the basic understanding. Is that we cannot turn our back on those who are really making our country great.
Dr. Laura, Reverend Laura?
I think I just
Dr.
got
Godot, no.
elevated to judge there. I'm not sure that's my role, Ron. All right,
Reverend
look,
where do you see the need for more state or local support?
there is plenty more that we can do. I am proud of our mayor. I am proud of our governor. And there are major gaps. I believe that every person deserves a dignified bed and home to sleep in. A pew is not a dignified bed. People and children especially should not be sleeping on the street and in churches. Now, we have not appropriated enough funds for families to be sleeping in the street and in houses of worship and in the shelter system right now. Mm-hmm. We have a 40-year-old law in this Commonwealth that says that every child under the age of 18 is guaranteed shelter. That is a beautiful thing. But we're in the process of rolling that back. Now, it's great to point to DC and say, those people are bad. Those people are doing bad things. But if we're doing that here, what does that mean about our own friends?
Well, Massachusetts does have, and Boston does have, a very robust network of support systems. And I know that there is some pushback on putting immigrants in hotels and putting, immigrants in
Sure,
hotels.
but my churches are filling those gaps. That is an unfunded mandate that is being pushed down to nonprofits and religious institutions. And then you've got churches, mosques, and synagogues filling those gaps. We are not actually designed to be social service providers. So I call on the legislature to step up and fill that gap.
Yeah. Do you also think that there's a place for the business community who relies on this immigrant workforce to also be more aggressive in demanding support for these communities that they rely on?
Why is First Baptist Church Jamaica Plain doing this and not Harvard and Google?
Yes.
Who rely.
And
Yeah,
especially
That's
those employers who need that
Yeah, who
workforce,
need and rely on these, yeah.
they need to invest,
Absolutely.
in those families so that they have at least, the foundation for them to go to work happily doing their work because they know that they have a place to stay. You cannot tell me that you are making billions of dollars over,
Amen.
Off of the labor and then
exactly,
not providing
and then you are
the
not providing
support.
any infrastructure for those people to find a place, to stay, to live, and to feel happy about
While they
who
provide
are.
services
So
to your
definitely, it's a
company.
call to action for every single person who needs to be involved and to do the right thing, which is to welcome immigrants with love and dignity.
I think
Wonderful.
the most important thing to remember, and I completely agree about all of the pieces you said about shelter, welcoming with dignity, employers do need to be more involved. There's many other ways that the executive could get involved. We can ourselves have a protected areas memo for Massachusetts.
That's right.
We can raise more money for legal services for immigrants so that they can actually be represented, particularly once they get arrested and detained, which has been happening in a large scale here in Massachusetts and across the country. We need to have more protections against raids. We need to amp up the Know Your Rights presentation so that employers understand what the
What rights
rights
they have to
are
protect
and
their
immigrants
employees.
themselves understand
Yes.
exactly when they can and cannot open the door.
Yeah. I want to remind everybody that we're here at the GBH Newsfeed Cafe at the main branch of the Boston Public Library in Copley Square. We have a live audience, and we have a question from our audience. So please, what is your question for our panelists?
My name is Mika Schumann, and many young people are discouraged to be politically active because of how polarized the news has become. So my question is, how can they and all people educate themselves on issues without being influenced by implicit or explicit bias?
I think it's a really important question. And I think there is something true to the polarization and the divisiveness. Underlying that is the demonization of immigrants and of a number of people of color across the United States. Remember, this isn't just immigrants who are being attacked, it's predominantly immigrants of color. And this is a very common, age-old, tired trend, as you said, Ron, of dividing and conquering, of coming out and blaming people of color for the problems that are truly made by the billionaires and by income inequality and by a lack of affordable housing. Those aren't as sexy, but those are the real problems here. Immigrants are not the problem. And part of what's so important for young people like you to understand is there's always going to be a time to step in and start fighting. And it is polarized. And there is a way for you to look into yourself and see that there is a right and there is a wrong. I have a 15-year-old son who lives in Needham, Massachusetts. And, our town is relatively well-educated, high income. And a lot of what he was interested in doing is helping out with immigrants who are living in the shelters and low-income immigrants in other parts of Boston that, frankly, you don't typically see in this area. And so what he chose to do was to start teaching music to those students. And so it doesn't have to be becoming politically involved and ending up in a protest or posting a bunch of stuff on social media. It can be just getting your body out there. And helping, educating people about Know Your Rights presentations and going to a food shelter.
And the opportunities out there for young people is endless. Because again, there is so much that the immigrant community is going through. So whatever that you have, an hour, 2 hours, a friend, a car, whatever that you have, you can use that to really support the community because there is so much to do. And we need the young people to come and join us. So thank you for the question.
Yeah, and as the media expert on the panel, I would say that don't be discouraged by the chatter. Take your time, read the stories, identify the sources of the news. You have to be, you have to educate yourself. An educated electorate is a requirement of a functioning democracy. And when folks who want to deter our democracy and destroy it present false images, false information, that's the goal, to scare people away from watching the news, to scare people away from paying attention to what's going on. So I encourage you to check your sources, be diligent, and read as much as you can, watch as much as you can, because you, the young people, are the future of our nation. And historically, the groundswell for change has always come from that younger community. I think with a lot of the cuts and things that are going on now, the groundswell is going to come from a lot of different places. But we really appreciate your question, and you're an important part of our community. So stay
Thank you.
engaged. Stay engaged. And on that note, I'd also like to talk a little bit about what your recommendations are, each of you, for the community you support. What do you tell those families who are functioning in this level of fear? And I will start with you, Dr. Godot, and then come back to.
So the first thing that we tell them is to remain calm, is to not play in the game that Washington wants them to play in. So if you want to create fear, and then you want to create chaos, and then all of a sudden, all of us who are playing into that game, it means that they are the one who are winning. And we are telling them, do not. You need to go to school, go to school. You need to take your children to school, do take your children to school, go to work.
Don't live in fear.
Don't live in
Don't
fear.
live in fear.
Because it's almost like you're putting yourself in a box and then you're hoping to breathe. There's no way that you're going to breathe if you are
you're in a
that
box.
Exactly. So you need to get out of the box. So that's one of the things that we reassure them. We also talk about the Know Your Rights a lot. So we want them to understand, if someone comes and knock at your door, what do you do? If you meet someone in the street who are telling you to give, your information, what you should do and not should do. So we want them to be educated about their rights so that they know exactly how to stand in front of ICE or any other one. And also we want them to stay in community. This is not the time for isolation, because if you isolate yourself, guess what? You're going to feel into depression, which again has a lot of consequences. So stay in community, remain with each other, let's support each other, and if you don't hear from someone, call. Find out exactly what's going on, because this is the time for us to really stay united and stay stronger.
Got it. Attorney Yuntz, can you talk about some of the specific rights that folks have and their rights if they are approached by ICE, and share with us a few key facts that folks need to know?
Absolutely. What's most important, despite the fact that this protected areas memo was rescinded, people still have their constitutional rights here in the United States. And so one of the most important things to remember is, as Dr. Godot said, it's very important to attend a Know Your Rights presentation. I can't give the entire presentation here, but I'll give you an idea of it, okay? If ICE knocks on your door, you do not have to open it.
Yes.
You can ask what's happening, and if they say police, or sometimes they'll say pizza delivery or something else, so look out and make sure. And then you can ask for a warrant. They cannot enter your home without a valid judicial warrant. Now, ICE is known for presenting a warrant that is not a valid judicial warrant. It's not real for entering the house. It does not meet the Fourth Amendment requirements. So if they show you a warrant and it's signed by an ICE officer and not by a judge, you do not have to open your door. And how do you even see a warrant through the door? They can put it under the door. They can hold it up to the window. There's ways that you don't have to open your door to those people. It's the same in protected spaces, like a school. In anything that is considered under the Fourth Amendment to be a private area, ICE is going to need a valid judicial warrant in order to have entry there. And oftentimes, in my years of my career, I have not seen an ICE officer have any warrant outside of the ICE warrant, which does not meet those qualifications.
Yeah, they spoke about that at the hearing earlier this week as well in Washington, where people were, where certain senators were implying that folks in various different cities and sanctuary cities were not following the law. And it was clear that the mayors in various different cities were like, no, we follow the law when there's a legitimate warrant, but if there isn't one, that's not the law in our state or in our land. So that was clear.
If I could just add two more things
Okay,
for
two
them
more,
to
two
know.
more.
As a lawyer, what you say is hope for the best and prepare for the worst. And I'm not trying to scare everyone, but at the same time, to undocumented folks who are out there, it is very important to prepare for the possibility of being arrested. Is Trump able to arrest millions of people at a time and deport them? Absolutely not. You may never have to use this plan, but it's important to make one. Make a family preparedness plan. Who's going to take care of your children? If for some reason you are arrested, you need to start thinking about things like that now. Immigrants who have been here less than 2 years need to start carrying documentation that shows, that have been here more than 2 years, need to start carrying documentation that shows that. Otherwise, they could be subject to what's called expedited removal, which means being deported without even a chance to go in front of a judge. And so it's a particularly scary time for folks who have been here for less than 2 years. And since the responsibility is on the immigrant to show that they've been here more than 2 years, it's important to know that and to be prepared in that way as well.
Thank you for that. Reverend Laura?
So we have a verse of scripture that says, perfect love casts out all fear. And so my sense is that the way that we love one another well is to love our neighbor as ourselves, right? To love one another well is to care for one another and to know our rights. And so my new evangelism strategy is to be passing out all of these red Know Your Rights cards. And I have some with me. So if you don't have a Know Your Rights card, come find me after the taping and I'll share one with you, right? These Know Your Rights cards that Attorney Heather was talking about, these are part of how we love our neighbor as ourself right now. And if you haven't attended one of the Know Your Rights trainings, you can find one, especially for religious leaders, on our website, masscouncilofchurches.org/new neighbors, right? Like, this is how we prepare ourselves. We know our rights and we help our neighbors to know our rights. Because again, we don't want to be in this situation, but we have rights. We have rights so that we know how to love our neighbors at this moment. And we defend our rights. And we proudly say that we love our neighbors, our immigrant neighbors, our queer neighbors, our Black and brown neighbors, our trans neighbors,
And
especially at this moment. Amen?
Amen. Amen.
Amen.
And America has always been known for what makes our country so great are the rights that we have as individuals. So it is
Amen.
important that we know them and that we stand by them. So thank you so much. I want to thank my guest, Reverend Laura Everett, Director of the Mass Council of Churches, Dr. Gerard Godot, Director of Immigrant Family Service Initiative in Mattapan, and of course, Attorney Heather Yonst, immigration attorney for many, many years, and wonderful advocate for our community. Thank you so much. My name is Ronald Mitchell, and this has been another episode of GBH Amplifies, editor and publisher of the Bay State Banner. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you next time.